Hey guys, it's Punkify here for League Top 10, and today I have a very important video for you. As many of you may or may not know, Riot has recently joined the list of companies who openly oppose the Stop Online Piracy Act, or SOPA. In a post in their announcement area, the CEO of Riot, Brandon Beck, or Rise as he's known in the community, detailed how the SOPA legislation, if passed, would be incredibly harmful to League of Legends and just gamers in general. Now, in this thread, there was a post by a congressman from the state of Colorado named Polis. Now, Congressman Polis is an avid League of Legends player and an opposer of both SOPA and its sister bill, PIPA, or Protect IP Act. Now, I was able to get in contact with the congressman and interview him on his thoughts surrounding the bills, as well as have him answer some questions that fellow League of Legends players actually had. I thought this would be a very unique opportunity for gamers to understand these bills better from the perspective of someone who is not only a gamer himself, but is also directly involved in the decision-making process as to whether or not these bills pass. Now, I urge all of you to watch and listen to this interview, as it affects you in more ways than you could possibly imagine. Your support against SOPA, whether you're in the United States or not, is extremely vital to not only our future as gamers itself, but also our future as human beings with certain creative and expressive rights. Now, unfortunately, my fraps footage of our formal introduction and the beginning of a questions response was corrupted. The audio is going to begin with my question, and then it's going to move to the actual video portion where Congressman Polis is using League of Legends as an example to answer that question. I hope you guys enjoy the video. Spunkify out. Touch on this, but for the creators of content, both original and user-generated content, this basically means that they now do not have security with posting their stuff online, correct?
Yeah, I mean, so like user-generated content is obviously the more worrisome, but even content is generated by companies. Like take League of Legends. Some might say that some of their characters perhaps are somewhat close to other characters. I think not. They're all original, but some people have ideas that some of them are based on other characters. Now, let's say somebody who owns one of those other characters sent a takedown notice. It could actually take down the entire League of Legends network unless they remove that character without even having to go to court.
So I know a lot of that also comes into play with like certain skins in League of Legends, because I know certain skins for certain champions. Maybe the champion itself wasn't similar to another one, but the skin itself is made in you know, kind of the image of a very famous character in another game or just a television series or something like that. So that is also another reason that someone can actually say, hey, this is very much similar to, you know, something we have, and just get it taken down.
Yeah, like one that's safe, for instance, because it's so old, is Little Red Riding Hood. We all like the Little Red Riding Hood Warwick skin, which you see from time to time. Now, Little Red Riding Hood was invented so long ago that there's no longer an active copyright on it. That's why I think there was a Red Riding Hood movie too that came out recently. Anybody can make a Red Riding Hood wherever they want. But if Little Red Riding Hood had been invented like 10 years ago or 30 years ago, you'd have this enormous problem where it could take down the entire network if something like SOPA or PIPA was the law.
I see. So a lot of questions that I saw in the thread that I created for this particular issue and this particular interview were concerning European players. They wanted to know exactly how would it affect them, since this isn't a U.S. law that would be passed. How would it affect them outside of the U.S. specifically?
So it actually affects them more than us. Currently so PIPA applies to both U.S. and international sites. SOPA, the one we're talking about, actually now has been amended. It only applies to international sites. So it would apply to servers overseas. It would apply, but anything that's purely domestic would not currently be affected by SOPA. But who knows what's in? I mean, you're playing with you know, somebody from across the seas. Their servers over there, so it really all blends together. But yeah, it affects everybody. It also sets a really bad precedent, because if the U.S. is doing this, we're kind of looked at as a leader in, you know, innovation across the world. Other countries are going to take up very similar laws and create their own firewalled internet. A lot of people said SOPA would basically create a firewall like China has, where you don't get the real internet behind China. You get one that, you know, when you type in Tiananmen Square, instead of demonstrators, you get like happy people celebrating, you know, and they force them to have that. Yeah. So that's kind of what US would have, and then other countries would follow suit, and every country would kind of have their own version of the internet rather than one cohesive global internet.
I see. I see. So is it accurate to say, after we've discussed this, that SOPA would not actually stop piracy at all?
I don't think it would. I mean, it really wouldn't. It's kind of like saying, okay, like Hey, look, I'm actually old enough to remember VHSs. I'm sorry, I admit it. You're probably not. But remember
No, I
VHS tapes?
remember VHSs.
You know what they are? Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So, like, when that was started, that was kind of the first technology that allowed pirates to then copy movies illegally, right? And could you have reduced piracy by banning VCRs? You probably could have. Maybe it would have reduced piracy a little, right?
Yes.
But it obviously was the wrong tack to take. So this is similar. Yes, if you put nation state firewalls on the internet in the name of copyright, you might, on the margins, reduce piracy. You might make it a little harder. But the question is, at what cost and what's the collateral damage? I mean, what you're doing is causing a lot more harm than what it was. So, I mean, there's a lot of ways to go at this. We have like an alternative proposal to say countries that don't honor copyright, like kind of rogue countries. If you stick a server in Nigeria, there's no way to stop it. There could be trade sanctions against those countries because they are costing creative people in our country in Europe money because they're not following copyright laws. So that's kind of a better way to do it, not to actually go after the architecture of the internet itself.
Now, you did mention other ways to go about it. And in the original thread that you posted in, when Riot actually took a stand against SOPA, you mentioned that you were working on some legislation to actually counter this as well. Can you kind of elaborate on what your legislation would do and how it would protect certain users?
Yeah, so it's called the Open Act, and it's again along those lines where instead of saying there are disabling DNS, disabling payment processors, what we're basically doing is saying, look, there can be trade sanctions against countries that don't have or don't enforce copyright. Like if you host something that's clearly illegal in a country, Europe and U.S. have infrastructure for that. If you put something up that's illegal, it can get taken down by court order very easily, and it does all the time. We have something called the Digital Millennial Copyrights Act, DMCA, and YouTube gets DMCA takedown notices all the time. It doesn't impede their business; they just take the content down. So that's kind of the right way to do that. Currently, there's countries that don't honor that, and that's what we need to get at with legislation. It needs to be multilateral. The internet isn't controlled by any one country. Multilateral means it needs to involve lots of countries working together.
So another question that some of the League of Legends users had that was posted in this thread was, how does a bill that can have such large repercussions, both on all the areas of media that we touch and social aspects, so with Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Google, etc., how has it gotten so close to success where it's actually now being considered and has a high margin of possibility that it's going to actually get passed through in Congress?
Yeah, so like people when they first hear about this are like, wait, that's never going to happen. So they think that they can just like ignore it and it'll go away. But there's really a 50-50 chance that this could become law. That's why we're so worried about it. That's why everybody's sounding the alarm bells. It's like right on the cusp. It's backed by a lot of very influential and powerful lobbyists and groups. So it's backed by groups like, the Motion Picture Association, the recording industry, the Chamber of Commerce. There's a lot of very influential groups that support it. Now, finally, technology industry is coming out against it. So you have companies like Google, eBay, Facebook. They're all coming out against it, but they're a little slow to the game. And because they're newer companies, they don't have those same like lobbyist ties that go back decades that those older legacy industries have.
I see. So is it just that Congress is out of touch with technology and out of touch with the internet and how big of it affects the younger generations? Or is it just all these lobbyists and the companies just pushing them and forcing them to kind of like sign off the bill?
Well, it doesn't help that the average age in Congress is 59. So, I mean, there's certainly a few people in their 30s and I don't know, maybe one or two in their 20s, like 29, 30, but there's only a handful of people that are my age or younger. If the average age is 59, there's people in their 80s, 70s. So, there is a generational thing. I hope that many of their grandkids or great grandkids kind of tell them what's up with this, but it means they don't necessarily have the firsthand experience with it. And again, they are hearing a valid complaint. There is piracy of movies, there is piracy of music. We know that. And so when they're told that something is a solution by someone that they trust, they don't necessarily have the critical information to examine that. They just say, okay, here's the solution. And frequently people like me are then said, oh, you support piracy? You like piracy? Then we have to say, no, we're not, we're not a pirate. I'm thinking of showing up to one of these meetings with like, a patch over my eye or something. I like some of the posts in the thread that said that like SOPA needs a Gangplank ult.
Yeah, I know. I understand that completely. So, let's see here. One question or a series of questions that were asked consistently was, You mentioned in the thread that they can write we could write our local congressman in our respective states, but a lot of people in Europe and also in the U.S. want to know, is there anything they can do additionally to kind of further along their feelings? Because they kind of feel that writing a simple letter to Congress isn't enough, it's too lighthearted, I guess you could say.
Yeah, I mean, there's absolutely more to do. So, like a letter, like find out, your congressperson, most of them are still on the fence. Some of them already support it. It has a lot of co-sponsors. Some of them, a smaller number, already oppose it. So you can find that out. If they oppose it, call them and thank them. If they support it, you can try to change their mind. If not, there's an election this year. So you get to help their opponent, so find out if they have an opponent. Go volunteer. Make sure their opponent knows about this issue and that they can use it, because their opponent might not even know. Their opponent might not be aware that this is a good issue for them to get votes, particularly from younger people on. And then the other thing, if your congressperson or senator too are somewhere in the middle on this, try to find where they're going to be, like at a town hall meeting or a public meeting. We tend to be very accessible. You just have to look on their website. Mine is polis.house.gov, but you can find out on Google their website. And a letter's great and a phone call is great. But an in-person question in a public setting is even better, because it just makes them realize that a lot of people care about this. So if they're getting 50 letters, 20 phone calls, and 3 people in different locations ask a question, they're going to go back to their staff and say, hey, a lot of my constituents seem to care about this. What's going on with this?
That sounds really great. I really appreciate you letting our viewers know that, because that was asked quite a lot. Now, one question that people had was, if this bill passes, what will happen to usernames? Not just games and content in general, but usernames that would have, say, Spider-Man 1942 or something in the name. Can those also fall into that?
Absolutely. All user-generated content can. So we're talking posts on bulletin boards, and we're talking the actual existence of usernames. So again, even today in America, if whoever owned the Spider-Man copyright was upset that somebody was calling themselves Spider-Man, they could actually go through a legal process to take down that name and force you to change it. They generally don't. But the problem is with SOPA, and PIPA makes it so much easier. We're actually worried that they would, because it would simply take, rather than a court action, a letter. And then it could actually threaten it wouldn't just be taking down that one name. It could threaten the entire, let's say, community where that username exists. So the community operator, whether it's League of Legends or Reddit, whoever it is, they're going to say, look, just to be careful, we wish we didn't have to make you do this, but we're going to have to disable that account, because otherwise you're going to otherwise they could take down our entire network. So it really changes that balance. And yes, it'll actually remove the freedom from people for coming up with usernames.
One question that people also had is, let's say this bill doesn't pass. What happens then? Is there a possibility that a more light version of the bill comes into fruition? And then how do we prevent that? How do we stop that? Is it the same process?
Yeah, it's certainly possible. So we're trying to, as legislators, those of us who oppose it on the Judiciary Committee, which I'm on in the House, we're trying to water it down. And if we succeed in watering it down, I'll probably still vote against it, but then it'll be less harmful if it passes. So we can try to amend it. We haven't been successful yet in amending it to water it down. But yes, we want to water it down, get rid of DNS disabling, require court orders for things, and then we'll see where it goes from there. But it could be made more innocuous if we can actually amend it to just water it down.
And finally, on the more serious question notes, what is, in your opinion, needed to draw more national media attention to the controversy? Because it seems like right now, to give an example, the 99% controversy and Movement Act had received huge media coverage for a long extended period of time. But in comparison, we have seen fairly small amounts of media coverage, at least in my opinion, it's for SOPA, in considering how large of a effect it would have on everybody's life. How do you feel like that could be changed, or do you think it would change?
Well, I think actually the gaming community could be a huge part of that, because the gaming community is very, very large in this country. They're typically completely apolitical. This is a chance where the gaming community can actually get involved with politics. I mean, what a difference it would make if all of a sudden, gamers were at town hall meetings, gamers were participating in political campaigns. I mean, it would really be an enormous strike that, congresspeople in the future would be very careful not to do anything against the internet if they realize that there is such a huge backlash from the gaming community. I think right now, a lot of people kind of write off the gaming community. They think, oh, most of them can't vote anyway. That's not true. The average age is whatever. I don't know, mid-20s, right? So, yes, there's some that can't vote, but many can. And they actually care about issues that affect gaming.
Yeah, I am one of those people who care about that.
Sure, and can vote.
And can vote. Correct. I am 23. So I really appreciate you coming on to answer these questions. So the final question that people wanted to know is if you'd be willing to stream, play with the other users who support you and support going against SOPA. Would you be willing to do something like that if it was arranged?
Yeah, I totally would. I can make my time available. I was going to suggest maybe if they're like auction it off for charity or something, whoever wants to play against me for Electronic Frontier Foundation or somebody else that's either involved with the SOPA fight or just a good cause to get, computers to kids in Haiti or Africa. So I'd be happy to do that. I like to think I'm pretty good. We'll see. In the meantime, I haven't revealed my username in League of Legends. So you could be playing against a congressman next time you're playing every single one of.
And just to kind of solidify that you do know what you're talking about with League of Legends, could you kind of explain how long you've been playing and your favorite characters and such?
I have been playing since beta, so I think you are too, one of the not relatively few old timers. Like, it's such a huge community now, it's insane, right? But it used to be very, very small, and I've been playing for a long time. I started out, I mained Anivia from the get-go. Since the addition of Maokai, I've been playing him a lot. I've also been playing Wukong quite a bit since his addition. And I'm playing both Rift and Dominion. I didn't have a team for ranked ladder. I didn't have like the time to put into that, but I play most nights. I play probably 4 or 5 nights a week, at least a game or two.
Well, that's really great to hear.
I have more wins than losses.
That's always the best. Yeah, I like to have you on my team, definitely. I really appreciate you coming on to do this. I'm very excited to have you on the anti-SOPA team, both as a gamer and as someone who is in Congress. And Congressman Polis, I really appreciate you just doing this interview with us tonight.
Oh, it's a pleasure. You can follow me on @JaredPolis on Twitter. And if you want to do some kind of streaming thing, just get in touch with me the way you did, and we'll see if we can find some time to do that.
Most definitely. I will definitely look into that with you. Jared, I really appreciate it, and I'll see you on the fields of justice.
See you on the fields of justice.